Like any resident of Marseille, every time we revisit Notre-Dame de la Garde, we see it through fresh eyes. Only doubly so, seeing as we were involved in the restoration of the basilica. I think it's magnificent. In terms of technique and quality, it's the most beautiful work I've ever done.
If there's one city that's at the crossroads of the Mediterranean, it's Marseille. People have been passing through here since the beginning of time. It's a promised land for all the foreigners who pitch up here. These communities have enriched the city with their way of life and expertise. The Patrizios from Italy have been practicing the art of mosaics here for 115 years. Their Marseille studio is the oldest of its kind in France. Michel, its founder's grandson, still works there with his daughter. Together, they create and restore decorative assemblages from tiny pieces of colored glass, known as tesserae.
I'm starting this pattern for an oratory. I'm doing part of the background in gold, and then I'll add any other colors afterwards. To make it stand out, I'm going to do the outer edge of the cross in a coppery gold, which is the darkest gold there is. Then inside that, I'll use a much lighter, more natural color for the body of the cross, to reproduce the drawing, or at least part of it. First, I must choose the colors, the shades. Now for this, I need to choose the darkest shades. Even with the darkest shades, there are slight discrepancies. We keep those because we don't want the shades to match perfectly. That's what makes it shimmer. Especially here, because this will be outside, so it will be in the sun. That's what sets a mosaic apart from a painting, which is less alive because it's quite flat. This is a mixture of 3 shades of fairly dark copper, and you'll see when I get to the end of the line. I eyeball where I need to make the cut. And then I use a chisel or hardy. I'm going to make a cut which, in principle, should match the drawing I did earlier. This is the same tool that's been used for 1.5 to 2,000 years. It's like a hammer with a very sharp cutting edge.
Michel learned this skill from his family. Along with other Italian craftsmen, the Patrizios were able to start a new life in France, thanks to their unique talent.
This is the story of 3 generations of mosaicists, which started with my grandfather. He moved here from Italy in 1903 for financial reasons. In the late 19th, early 20th century, times were really hard in the Friuli region on the northeastern border of Italy. People were given this extraordinary opportunity because they had this skill that was quite rare at the time. They were the only practicing mosaicists. And gradually, over the years, they made their fortune out of it and were able to emigrate, taking their expertise with them. At the end of the 19th century, mosaics played a big part in all those grand buildings designed by housemen in Paris. My grandfather settled in Marseille, where he worked as a mosaicist throughout the first half of the 20th century, followed by my parents. I learned the skill from my parents, and I've given my daughters a taste for it too.
Today, Michel Patrizio is one of very few people to specialize in restoring 19th century mosaics, those Venetian enamels made of glass and gold. Experts see this precious metal as the king of the yellows.
The material in itself is quite extraordinary. I mean, it's gold. You don't just use gold anywhere, anyhow. I'm talking about ancient mosaics made out of natural materials, marble and stone. For the most part, they come from Byzantium. That's where golden mosaics first appeared on walls and in domes. They're clearly the benchmark. Byzantine mosaics were striking for their gold. It was gold that embellished the domes. They really shimmered. It's a quality material, which, over time, in theory, if it's used properly and is well made, lasts an eternity.
This gold is one of the key elements of basilicas and cathedrals. Dating from 1853, Notre-Dame de la Garde is no exception. Built in a Romano-Byzantine style, this guardian and protector of the city shimmers with an abundance of golden mosaics. Glass tesserae from Venice adorn its vaults, the dome, and the naves of the basilica. Each panel consists of about 10,000 tesserae per square metre, amounting to a total of around 12 million tiles. There are few sanctuaries in the world with such a proportion of their walls covered in mosaics.
We've come to have another look at the mosaics we installed about a decade ago. No? I don't know if you remember this one, the central medallion with the ship. We basically changed the part above the sea. There was a layer of gold that was really damaged, so we replaced it.
In 1944, Notre-Dame de la Garde got caught in the crossfire during the liberation of the city. Numerous mosaics were destroyed at that time and were painted over as a temporary measure after the war. It wasn't until 2006 that they were restored to their former glory.
In this part here, there were over 100 bullet holes and gaps caused by bomb damage in August 1944, during the liberation of Marseille, when the mosaics shattered. They had to be restored, but due to a lack of funding after the war, the holes were plugged with plaster, and an imitation mosaic was painted on top. It was very well done, but after about 50 years, the paint disintegrated. So we replaced them. It was a big job. When you look at them now, you can barely see any trace of the gaps, which we integrated into the whole. The original intention behind producing gold mosaics was to add value, because gold tops everything. There is no color more striking than gold. It's very symbolic. It's unique, both in terms of value and price. Obviously, we could have used yellow instead, but the sparkle you get with gold is quite unique.
For 2 years, Michel and his team braved the 20-metre climb in the cathedral, restoring 1,200 square metres of mosaic. They were following in the footsteps of 19th century mosaicists.
This, for me, is the illustration of the perfect mosaic. Look how delicate the tesserae are, especially the bird's feathers. Some of the tesserae are only 1 millimetre thick. It seems mad. It's incredible to think of how many hours of work it took just to do one bird. This is a really excellent mosaic. It's the best.
Like any resident of Marseille, every time we revisit Notre-Dame de la Garde, we see it through fresh eyes. Only doubly so, seeing as we were involved in the restoration of the basilica. I think it's magnificent. In terms of technique and quality, it's the most beautiful work I've ever done.